It is Thursday, September 13th, 2018. It is 6:30, and we are starting with board meeting for Public Health Hospital District Number 4, King County Board of Commissioners regular meeting agenda. So we're called to order. We stand for the flag salute. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Would the clerk please call the roll?
President Norris.
Here.
Vice President Karen.
Here.
Secretary Spikers.
Here.
Commissioner Pollard.
Here.
Commissioner Young. Here.
Do I have a motion for approval of the agenda?
I make motion to approve it.
Is there any discussion? Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
This item about the CEO's and it should be a new business for the entire board, not a community part of it.
I believe there is a committee that is working on that. Do we not have a committee that deals with the CEO's incentive plan?
It shows action here, under item 1B.
Yeah, 1B.
Reports. I'm just saying, I really think that should have been listed as new business for the board, not as a part of the committee report.
I don't know, is there any discussion about that? Personally, I don't know that makes any difference. Does anybody else have an opinion?
I don't think it makes any difference.
Okay. Thank you for that statement, and we'll see if in the future if that needs to be changed or not, Bishop Pollard. All right, Maddie, call.
You have a motion on the floor.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Other than that, is there any other questions about the motion to approve the agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Oppose?
Opposed?
One opposed. Okay. Moving on. Committee reports. Decision credentialing, and okay, we didn't do a consent. Communications. And wait, there's other things too. Okay, so we did the agenda communications. We skipped that when we approved the agenda. Yeah, let's see, but no, we haven't. I see that there. All right, do we have any public comment?
Hi, Scott Scowcroft for the record from West Seattle. I'd just like to encourage the board to be enthusiastic about the work that you have to do tonight, and not to get tied up on things that don't matter, like trivial parliamentarian items that really don't matter one way or the other and derail, but otherwise might be some great work that you can do tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Hearing none, we will move on to communications. I don't have anything particular to share this month, but I believe our CEO might have something to share.
I do. I have a number of things to share. Thank you very much. You have my report in front of you. There are copies there available to the public. First, I'd like to, as always, on the top of my list is the affiliation strategy. Following last month's board meeting, I followed up with potential affiliate partners, and specifically Overlake and Virginia Mason, to establish terms of affiliation that I will present later in tonight's meeting. A preview on finances. The financial report will show that we had a net income of $245,000 in July compared to the budget of $139,000. Our unrestricted cash fell in the month to $7.8 million due to a payment to Medicare for the 2017 cost report reconciliation. We knew that was coming, and that's when it comes. Year to date, our net income is $209,000 compared to our budget of $192,000, a favorable variance of $17,000. Preview to our next month's report. Average daily census, please strike that. That should say August. And I apologize for that in the report. In this paragraph, all July's should say August. Average daily census in August was 22.3. Commissioners, I apologize. I've got ahead of myself. That is correct. Average daily census in July was 22.3. August comes later. Compared to the budget of 22.2, we were just barely above budget on inpatient census in July. Our occupancy rate was 89%. ED visits were over budget at 339 compared to 335 budget. Operating expenses were significantly under budget in July, 77%, and I'll let the committee report deal with or shed more light on that detail. Year to date, we're 2% under budget. Now our preview to August. I was a little excited to get to August, only because our average daily census in August was 24.2, a 97% occupancy rate. ED didn't quite make budget of 335 at 323. As always, until we complete this project, the Rural Health Clinic will occupy a place in my report. We still anticipate approval once we have received the unannounced survey. I will note that in the medical committee meeting that I was not at this month, I was on vacation that day, but the medical committee received a very detailed report from Dr. Wickup on everything that has been done to ready ourselves for that survey. We are ready. We just are still in anticipation of the survey. Department of Health survey. The Department of Health began its hospital survey on Tuesday of this week. I reported this, finished this report yesterday, and I said the survey was going well. It continued to go well through the day today, and the survey completed this afternoon, and surveyors have now left. And I will provide a detailed overview of their findings at our next board meeting. I will say this, though, that last survey we had, which was 18 months ago, we set a record for the lowest number of findings that we had in a survey, and actually that record fell because we have now a survey with one less finding this time. So kudos to all of our staff who've done an amazing job. I shadowed one of the surveyors for the 3 days. Dr. Wickup shadowed another one. Scott Mohavoc accompanies the fire marshal during the fire marshal's part of the survey. And I was just very impressed throughout the survey of the work that our staff does and the efforts that they make, especially when it comes to documenting all the work that we do. Next item, rehabilitation and fall prevention. We will be providing fall assessments at the fall prevention event at the Snoqualmie Senior Center on September 18th. The next day, we will be presenting fall prevention training and hosting a booth at the outside Senior Center. Had a great opportunity this month. On September 7th, Cassie Sauer, President and CEO of Washington State Hospital Association, and I, along with a few other hospital administrators, met with 8th Congressional District candidate Kim Schreier, physician, Dr. Schreier. The purpose of the meeting was to better understand her position on healthcare issues. We learned that she is very supportive of the Affordable Care Act. She also supports reversing recent changes by the executive branch to weaken the act, and she supports expansion of Medicare to provide coverage under an opt-in model that would expand the number of people that could be covered under Medicare. More to come, of course, with the election coming up, but we were very gratified to hear how much she is, of course, in tune with healthcare issues because of her being a pediatrician and support of programs that provide insurance coverage to the public. Note here on the 2019 budget, work's begun on the development of our 2019 budget, and meetings are now scheduled with each department head to review volumes, staffing plans, supplies, and other expenses. And of course, that will roll up, and I've got a note from that below about some meetings for you and the public on the budget. Our quarterly medical staff meeting was held on the 12th, where all members of our medical staff come together, and they have presentations on the topics of affiliation and our antimicrobial stewardship program, might be something that would be of interest to the board at some point in a work study session. I can tell you that it was certainly of a lot of interest from the Department of Health, and we're proud to report on the work that we're doing there in the use of antimicrobials. And you see that also in the quality reports. A note here on some calendar items. The WSHA annual meeting is October 11th and 12th, again at the Marriott Waterfront in Seattle. We have a annual staff holiday party. That date is now set for December 7th, 6 p.m. Again at Skyview Community Center. It's a great facility. We've had good experience there. And then here are those 3 dates related to the budget. We have a Finance Committee working session coming up on October 23rd. We'll present to the board as a whole on November 8th, and then the public hearing on the 15th, right before Steve has to hit the send button to King County. And that concludes my report.
Are there any questions for our CEO, Tom Hooker? Anybody have any questions? Hearing none, we will move along then. Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we have our counsel, legal counsel. Skip Hauser.
Good evening, and tonight,
A wonderful yellow sheet.
yes,
You change the color, so.
I can tell you
Thank you.
a little story. When President Theodore Roosevelt's son came to him, he said, I have to give a speech. I've never given one before. Can you give me advice? He says, yes, remember the 3 B's. He said, be sincere, be brief, and be seated. So I will tonight. I'll be very brief. This is a short one for you tonight. It's just the handling of emotion. And it seems rather simplistic, but sometimes we don't handle it all so well. So there's just a couple steps. The motion is brought before the assembly, and then there is consideration. So a member makes the motion, either move or offer, that's referred to in that step. He says, I make a motion, or he uses the word I move. And then he says to move or a particular proposal. Then, in order for this motion to proceed and not die, it has to have a second. Otherwise, it would die for lack of a second. And if it's seconded, then the chair gets to intervene and state the question on the motion. The step of stating the question on the motion should be not confused with putting the question. All you're doing is stating the motion at that point. You're not putting the question before the body. So you're stating it. It places it later, and it means putting it to a vote. So it's not going to a vote yet. You're just letting the people know what it is, and it would open up for debate. Neither the making of the motion nor the seconding of the motion places it before the assembly. Only the chair gets to do that. The chair says the question is now before you, and then you would start debate. It's called pending or being on the floor. And that opens it up to debate. And then upon debate being concluded, you would either adopt the motion or the motion would be lost or rejected. Pretty straightforward.
Thank you.
So I'll be seated.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Let's remember that. The hard part. Thank you. We've already gone and done the consent agenda premature. Commissioner Pollard's already put it on the table and we already voted. So
That was the approval.
that's approval of agenda. All right. So we're going to go to, approval of the minutes for August 9th, 2018 and August 22nd, 2018. Is there any corrections that need to be made to those minutes? Do I have a motion to accept those minutes?
I make a motion to accept those minutes.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to vote. All those in favor and approval of the minutes from August 9th, 2018 and August 22nd, 2018, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No oppositions? They pass. Thank you. Next, we have position credentialing. Is that going to come later with the committee, or is that going to be a consent item? No, she's not.
It's in the minutes of the medical committee.
Okay, so I will, medical committee, I'm going to ask whoever's head of it. Do you want to push the position credentialing right now, or do you want to wait till your committee report? Usually I thought we were doing.
That's coming next, is it?
No, finance committee is before medical committee.
Do we have to have a motion to change it?
I don't know. Is there parliamentary? Do we just approve it right here the way it is? I don't know.
It's listed on,
It's the minutes from the last meeting.
it's listed on the consent agenda, so you can move forward with approval of that as part of the consent agenda. Or you could simply ask the physician credentialing be approved.
I make a motion to approve the physician.
Yes.
That's
A second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. No? It passes. Thank you, everyone. Now we move on to committee reports, and Finance Committee is at the top of the list. Commissioner Spikers, you're on.
All right, thank you. We had a great month. And I just want to point out, 2018, we have surpassed 5 of the 7 months what we projected to have a net for the month. So the bottom line is we did better in 5 of 7 months. We are ahead of this year's budget by a slim margin, I believe. And that's good. We had an upswing in the accounts receivable. There was a holdup on one of the personal health care plans, apparently on the swing bed reimbursement. So that is unusual. Usually it's pretty much around 30-day average return on that. And there were, it amounted to delay in payments of about 1.2 days. So we would be at 56.8 days versus 58. And then there was additional what we will be able to do is separate the analysis between the clinics, specialty clinics, and inpatient soon. And so I remember we talked about this about 3 months ago, and I said, well, it would be really nice to find out which division, I'm going to say division, or what area is falling behind in the average rate. We determined the national rate is around 48, Washington's 53 benchmarks on the accounts receivable. Why am I delaying or deliberating on accounts receivable? It's our ability to have cash in hand, and it's really a big concern for public hospitals, especially critical access hospitals, that on average they don't have much more than 30 to 60 days of reserves to pay. So that's the average. And that leads me to tell you that we have 97 days, 97 and a half days of reserves. So that's nothing what we did anticipate that our cash balance would go up as a result of being able to depreciate the hospital and therefore get reimbursed through Medicare at a higher rate. Doesn't mean that we actually are charging more than we used to. We're actually charging less because we've become much more efficient in the process of how we deliver care. And we are, I think we probably will have a session, we had a session on quality here not too long ago, and we're improving on that too. And so I'm very confident that we're headed in the right direction and much better than anticipated in that regard. However, there's one thing that I got hung up on. We did a projection with how much cash we would have on hand on this date back before we built the hospital. We thought we would have $800,000 more. And that is a little concerning to me, even though we're doing good day to day, but the bottom line is, we need to have that cash for future endeavors if we need to have that. So I am concerned about that. Now I look back and I go, well, yes, we just paid off $2 million, something like that,
To Medicare.
back to Medicare. That 800,000 may be looking at the full year's average, probably, maybe. I'm not sure. You know, when we projected, I think they were looking at an average. So if we only pay 800,000 back this year to Medicare for the rest of the year, which is probably true, the remainder of the months will probably creep up again in our cash. So I'm hoping, because it was just a few months ago, we were above, or right there. So I'm thinking that we'll probably make up that 800,000 somewhat.
Well, the variance you talked about, the 800,000, that forecast was done in 2015.
Yes.
We had a year not as good as we wanted in 2016, and we then turned it around in 2017. We're still suffering the effects of 2016 being below plan. That's caused our cash to be slightly below where we thought it would be in 2015. So it's a cumulative effect. We are building up, but yeah.
But I think we won't have, because I think they take the average of monthly. I think they're looking at not this day on this day. In fact, were they looking
Yeah,
at?
we look at what the cash is in the bank at the end of the month. That's our cash.
Right, but when they're projecting, they're
Who's that?
projecting on,
Who's
when
that?
we projected.
I made it
I
projected.
feel it, yeah.
And they said, okay, you're going to move into the hospital. We anticipate you are going to do X, Y, Z in patient volumes. We now realize we're below in outpatient volumes and emergency room volumes. That has impacted our cash. If you weren't below in cash balances because of that, there'd be something wrong. If your volumes are lower, or fee for service, you would be lower in cash now than you had anticipated 3 years ago. Caveat to that, I don't know any business that 3 years ago exactly pegs their cash. That is a forecast, and that will vary.
So it's an estimate based on the data that we have at the time, correct?
How much cash you gonna have in your bank account in 3 years? Guys wanna tell me?
Zero. I'd like to have more.
Yeah, maybe too. We all want to have more, but
So-
it's a hard number to predict. But at the same time, we don't shy away from predicting and showing you, tracking you where we are against that prediction. So,
And
yeah,
all-
that's.
And all the reason more to want to affiliate
Oh,
and
yeah.
grow our outpatient services. So
I'm
that's,
not arguing with that one
that's
at
a
all.
huge, that's what we've all decided many years ago to be able to get this hospital lifted off the ground. So shooting back to a positive here,
Well, let's just reality.
but the expenses for the month were way down. It was as much as 49, 50% employee
In
benefits.
some areas, we're 7% below.
Professional fees was down, repairs and maintenance was down, utilities was down, purchase services were down. No, the purchase services
Yeah, it was down.
were down.
Yeah.
So those things add up.
Yeah.
At 7%, it looked like a lot more than 7% looking at these expenses, but I didn't, add them all up and divide or whatever. So that's pretty tremendous. I'm just wondering, there won't be a surge in expenses next week. We put them down as they come in, right?
Well, we put them down as they come in, and we'll
Notwithstanding
continue.
the vendor who may, and we've had that before,
Yes.
we've had a vendor who didn't get their bills
That's
due
true.
sometime.
That's true.
That's out of our control.
So anyway, that's a little different look that I normally present to the board. Those are things that are always important, that I look at, but I never say too much about sometimes. So anyway, that's my report at this time. The Finance Committee minutes are there for anyone's review too. If you have any questions, just let me know. And before I leave on this agenda, I ask to approve the warrants this time of $5,028,300. $5,028,361.88. That's right. Had me going there for a second. Make the motion.
I'll second it. Is there any discussion? I will take it to, yes, Commissioner
Yes.
Pollard.
Well, that was perfect. I'll just.
All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Okay.
And then I'll take questions. I
Yeah.
didn't give anybody a chance from the board to ask any questions, so.
Yeah, and I think we, under Finance Committee is the CEO incentive plan. I don't know if we want to leave that right here. If we do, then we need to address it because it's on the
Oh, okay.
agenda. Or we wait till later in the meeting.
Okay, we can wait till the questions till later. Yeah,
Okay.
that'd be better.
So where are you moving it to? President?
I think when we have our comment on our CEO incentive program, I'm trying to see where it lies in
Isn't it
this.
logical to go to new business?
Yeah, it's right, but it's right under, it's not under, it's
It's under the.
under Finance Department, yeah.
Well, that's coming as a recommendation from the committee.
Okay, so I think you probably need to address that unless you want me to.
Yeah, I guess I can. Is Nancy? You're
Yes,
here?
she's here.
So we have someone that was at the meeting. We had a meeting and we talked about it for a while. And we had Nancy Kastner and Matt Johnson and the teachers sit there as well as Slipka, I'm sorry. And Martin O'Mara, he was also at the meeting, but we had some recommendations. We went through a couple of meetings with Nancy. And I've made some recommendations based on what the board was I felt like it was the most important thing to have happen was that we break even, we end up on budget for the year and try to make a profit a little bit. So that was the biggest thing, and I think we broke it down. I like the way the recommendations or the choices that we are going to be recommending. We're recommending that. Has everyone had a chance to look at the recommendations? Was it draft 4? I guess it's now draft 5. Because it's pretty intricate and it's kind of confusing. We were looking at a potential 80% weight for potential bonuses for obtaining a break-even budget or above. And then that would be broken down to 80% of any total possible bonus. And then that would be broken down if we were able to get a 1% net profit, and then up to the next level, 2% and above. And so I think that when something like 50% up to 80%, something like that, would be if we could meet budget or get up to 1% net profit. Now, there was one thing that was kind of tricky because we may have a year at some point we project a negative profit of maybe 50,000 or something like that. So I included a caveat that allowed that the bonus would be given if there was if we were able to meet budget or break even, whichever was greater. So that would allow for us, the reason why I wanted that is, I don't know, we've been doing this for a few years, everyone here, about our budgeting in November. It's awfully hard to predict, and I've been on several unbelievable projections 10 years ago that were so far off that I almost died. It was so bad. When you're off by $3 million on a budget of $25 million, it's kind of bad. So what that will do is really cause a projection that will be very accurate, I think. And that, not that we haven't been, but I want it even more accurate. And that will help out with that, because no one wants to project an $800,000 net profit when the reality is we're down $200,000 negative by the end of the year. And that would not be good to try and get a bonus out of, right? It would be very bad. So I think that will help. And the only way that CEO would be able to obtain the remainder of the bonuses is if he actually was able to get that first level, that first bonus area of net break even or better on our budget. I know that the only reason why I did it this way is because I know that this board has been in the past almost angry about not being on budget, and I know our taxpayers have been very upset in the past, and I think it's come a long way, and I think we've done many good things, but I think it's this kind of a policy for the bonuses. If we make $600,000, I'm all in favor of, because we have never, so I'm all in favor of giving credit or something to somebody that's really working hard to be able to do that. So that is why I'm it's kind of like a carrot. You can get one carrot, maybe you get two. They end up with 3 or 4 or 5 carrots, and it's not bad for the organization. It's good for the organization because it shows, one, that we appreciate all the hard work, and you get some return for all the hard work. And on the other end, all of those categories, quality improvement, utilization of the ER and clinic, and patient satisfaction, those are other factors that that's what this hospital is built on. So those are great factors and good measurements in my opinion. So that's kind of where we left it in the finance committee but obviously that's not a final. The board should probably talk about it and give some suggestions.
I would like to make a suggestion. This is the first time everybody's seen this, correct? Other than the discussion David and I had with the chief. I don't think this is anything necessarily to vote on, but
no.
Maybe at our next board meeting, everybody comes with some thoughts maybe about this. I feel like this is a lot of information, and I'm not sure everybody's had time to look at it and understand it. If you have, then you might have questions for those that helped us. If not, then we can move on. Are there questions from the board about
you mentioned first level, which is meeting the budget or breaking even.
Yep.
Okay, so where are we on that? I guess that's
Today, where are we at right now on it? We're about at budget. We're a little bit above. So that's about where we are right now.
Nancy, would you be available so if the board has questions, they can address you?
absolutely.
I liked your suggestion that we give, since we didn't get this until last Friday, we give the board time to study this.
Yeah, sure.
And then deal with it at the next meeting.
But it was in the packet, wasn't it?
Ask the consultants to come in.
Okay.
I think it's a little premature to start.
Well, it was in the packet, and everybody got the packet.
And last Friday, yeah.
So we should, that's almost a week, we should have at least have read it.
Unfortunately, I was not able to download the package. Okay, because there was an issue again.
Well, maybe while Nancy's here,
Yeah,
maybe she could kind of give us like the broad
which we're thinking,
snapshot of what this is.
Happy to do that.
okay, I think that would be helpful for
I'm gonna
everybody.
do a little bit of process first, if that works for you. Is that okay to talk about how we came up with this?
Yeah,
Yes.
That would be.
That will help.
And I'm more curious also, you have the threshold here, the target, you know, you have the numbers, then you have the stretch, and then you have to get assigned a weight.
Yes,
So I'd like to really be more
certainly. So,
clear on that.
the first part of the process is actually on the first page.
Okay.
We met with Dariel and said, what do you think are the most important metrics to base this on? Because you have to have something to measure progress against to know whether you're going to pay against it. And we chose 5. The board eventually chose the 4 that are listed right here. And then we had another meeting and we said, well, of the ones that we've chosen, that's on page 2. What is the number that we need to tie everything to? And that's what this graph is on page 2. And the idea of, the number, the type, and the metric we've seen before, so we added all the other columns on page 2 that you're seeing. So when you're talking about a threshold, you say if one of the reasons we wanted to make sure we looked at like similar hospitals, your idea about the swing beds was perfect. We got a list from the hospital, we went to every one of them, we looked at publicly available data, and then we also did a survey from all the 990s that those hospitals file. I'm sorry?
I'm not sure what 990 is.
Oh, okay, she nodded, okay.
Okay.
All right, does everybody know what a
990.
Yeah, it's the financial report that nonprofit organization has to file, right?
I don't know 90.
Yes. And so we looked at all that, and that had plenty of data for us. And then we looked at what is typical for both salary and for any sort of incentive target. So what if someone's going to get, what's the typical payout? What percentage of salary does this person get based on their pay? So then we knew whether the pay was correct for the CEO, and we also knew about what to start with for what we call the target, which is the middle column. And so the target is based on if that would be the ideal situation, if you want to put it that way. So, but you have to say, well, if they don't quite get to ideal, do we want to pay out anything? And that's what the threshold is. So the threshold has to be achieved for anything to be paid out. And then we added a further qualifier based on the discussion from the board and also the finance committee that nothing would be paid out unless the first metric of net income is achieved. And that's actually quite common. Boards do that fairly often, where if there's a metric that's so important to the health of the organization, they set that as the one thing that has to happen for anything else to happen. So it's the activator. So what it says on threshold for 2018 net income achieved at plan of 600,000, if that doesn't happen, nothing gets paid on the incentive. And if none of the others get paid out, the weighting tells you what percentage of the incentive would get paid out at that level. So the net income is so important that it actually makes up 80% of the incentive. And then the other 3 each make up about 6 2/3, and then that to come up with the other 20%. So what we're saying is, meeting budget is all. And then after that, these achievements are good, and they're but the thing you have to do is you have to meet budget to get any incentive. So then that's like the bones of the plan. So then you say, well, what does this all mean? Well, when you take all the percentages and you start calculating it out, you go with the target incentive for most CEOs of the similarly situated hospitals is 15%. So then if you go to the page 3, you'll see that we actually calculated what percentage of the income the person would get based on achieving these goals. And the reason that the 8% is green is that is what activates anything else in that column.
Our version is just shaded.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm
That's
sorry.
okay, but it's shaded.
Okay, the shaded one,
The shading.
the gray shaded one. And it says 8%. So if the financial, but if you get the net income of $600,000 or meet budget, that's the same thing as meeting budget, then 8% of the person's income would be, 8% of their salary would be paid out. And then if any of the others in metrics are met for 2018, then those would be paid out at that percentage of their income. So let's say, and there's actually on page, double check. So on page 3, it says there's a scenario, it says an example. So let's say that 3 of the 4 metrics are met. Number 1, threshold, the net income is achieved. The utilization of the ER and clinic is achieved, and the patient satisfaction are all achieved at target. But number 3, the quality improvement plan is not achieved. In that case, the percentages listed for the 1, 2, and 4 would be paid out for a total of 9.32%, 33% of their income. And then we also give you the numbers. So the annual base salary is $220,000, and so they would get 10% of their. Actually, it says 10%, but it actually should be 9.3% of the annual base salary. So it'd be slightly less than $22,000.
When you're looking at these thresholds up at page 2, the 600, was that our budget?
That's what we were told, yes.
Or was it 600 and something?
About 600, well, 600, just ran it with 100, 600,000. And then,
I mean, we can amend the plan to show the exact budget number if you like.
It's kind of a working document.
Yeah, this is noted as a draft because it's not approved.
Because it's what?
It's not approved. Yes. And then the last page is just, part of what we're doing is fulfilling an IRS requirement. And so one of the things in that requirement is that you have to say what you looked at in order to get the information that you're using to base your decision on. And that is page 4, which is, as Dariel said, it's a lot of words. Does that help? Madam Vice President?
Question.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
You mentioned page 4, and IRS wants to know what we looked at. When I first picked this up, I was very surprised. As far as the comparables go, you have 3 Nevada hospitals, 1 Oregon hospital, and 5 Washington hospitals. How did you pick, for example, the first one you listed, Boulder City, and why do you think that's comparable?
This is the list that was given to us by the hospital to be used as
by me. And what we did was, the board had said, let's look at hospitals that have a similar service mix, because we recognize we are unique with a high school, and there's some thinking that that's different. So I talked to our cost report preparer and said, I need some recent hospitals. They need cost reports all over the country. So in the western part of the U.S., Washington, I would like some Washington hospitals. If we have to go out of state, that's fine too. what are hospitals with a similar service mix? These are the ones they use. And they're the experts.
Well, I think Boulder City, just to take one, I can get focus on all of them. It's not somewhere. It's not somewhere. It has.
CPA does a lot of controversy.
For example, they have a 47-bed, in addition to the hospital, 25-bed hospital, they have 47 beds for long-term care. That's one example. They have inpatient surgical. We don't have that. So it's not just a little swing-bed hospital comparable to ours. It's a totally different fish. And that's why I don't think it's a good comparable. And the fact that it's not in our market area, I think that's a factor. So, and I can make comments and others can make comments about the others, right? They're not really comparable. So I think maybe if we do have an opportunity to study these and address some of these questions at the next meeting.
I think we want to get this, we want to move it forward is a goal. I don't think we've already stretched it out quite a little bit. That doesn't mean I'm saying no, but that's something.
Well, I'm curious as to what were you proposing before? It sounded like that's what you were proposing.
Well, we had, at one point, we proposed a little bit of a work study, I believe, before we had somewhat talked about that.
I think, can I say something?
Yes, you can.
I think we have 5 out of the 9. We have 5 in Washington State.
Yep.
So I think that's a fairly good, analysis there. So Nevada's 2, Oregon's 1, and the rest is Washington. So what I'm saying is, like you said, it's taking us this far. And it'll be even farther if
We have to talk more.
12 or 15 more analysis. So, 5 out of 9 is not bad.
Well, it would be great if they were comparable, but if you look at up closely, they're not comparable.
No,
In my opinion, and I think I can show that they are.
May I respond?
All right, you may respond, and then we can talk to Steve, see if he can help us with this.
Well, one of the things that we were all concerned about is to make sure that we try to get as close as possible to our makeup. There's nobody in the United States that is like this hospital. So you're not going to find another hospital that is exactly like ours. No, I guarantee it. And that's why I said, well, I think you're going to have to go around the country and not look at actual numbers, bottom lines, but look at percentages of what the CEOs get for bonuses. And what do they base that on? That was probably the most fair thing for everybody to be able to look at. And so that's my 2 cents.
May I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
I think the other thing, thank you for saying that, because that actually triggered memory. And one of the things that you asked for is that they be rural also.
Yes.
And that was part of I think that was probably part of the criteria that Steve looked at when he was looking at it, to make sure that we picked adequately rural hospitals, if you will.
And I believe there's a definition that we follow for rural, which would make it consistent. It's not just a.
Yeah, it's basically, definition is, you have no city of 75,000 or more.
Yeah, 55.
And that's the case here, and so you can say that Issaquah is rural, and that's one way to look at it. But I don't think it's rural. This just happens to be the way they define it.
Are there any other discussion or questions for Nancy?
I just want to thank her for the good work that she's done.
Yeah, and I thank you that you've been willing to listen to David and I in different ways. I mean, emails and talking, and you've been really available, so thank you.
Well, your comments were very, very good, and that's why I insisted on draft 5, because this is the finance committee's draft. We had others, and they helped us refine it down to this draft.
Point of order, President.
Yes, Commissioner Coleman.
Some of these drafts have had the word confidential on them, and it still shows up in draft number 5 in the shadow. Should we clarify that when it came to the Finance Committee in the first iteration, it no longer was confidential because we are a public body and our dealings must be not confidential in this sort of thing.
I'm not sure how the parliamentary procedure on that. All I know is that whenever we do a draft of anything, we still label it confidential until it is final.
It could be deemed to be confidential because it's gone to the advisory committee. The advisory committee is not a governing body. It's not necessarily open to the public, all the information there. So it could be deemed to be draft. So you can maintain that confidentiality until the board acts upon it. But if you disclose it, like you've done now, it does become public because you've presented it, you've delivered it.
I think the way we usually do it is just mark it draft rather than confidential. And I think that's more appropriate.
We've been asked to do that before with public bodies, so that's why we just follow the same procedure.
Not uncommon in our
Thank you so much, Nancy.
Do you want me to stay while you're still working on this? And I'll just stay.
Thank you. Okay, so we're done with, are there any other questions for our Finance Committee? And we have approval of the warrants, and did we already do that?
Yes.
Yes, we did, and we did the CEO said, okay, Medical Committee.
Alrighty. As Commissioner CEO Parker said, there'll be a fall prevention event at Snow Valley and at Mount Sinai Senior Centers to coincide with National Fall Prevention Awareness Day, which is the first day of autumn. And I will just tell you that at Carnation and Snow Valley Senior Center, they have a flyer out that says the only thing that should fall is leaves.
That's good.
I think that's that.
Or your blood pressure.
No, you don't want blood pressure to fall.
Anyway, scheduling has begun for the flu immunization outreach events. I'm not sure where they're all going to be, but I'm sure you'll find out.
Commissioner, Young, I do have at least the initial list. We're still working on expanding it. I could comment on that if you'd like.
Sure.
So the first group of organizations, centers where we'll be is University House, Senior Centers in Carnation, North Bend. Elder Care, which is a adult family home, Snoqualmie School District, where we'll be some teachers, Z-Tech organization, and we just got an inquiry from Tanner Electric.
And part of the point for to clarify, what is it that we will do with these organizations?
Provide flu shots.
Could we get a little more information? Are these flu shots where they pay a copay, they must have insurance, or is it trying to cover everybody? That's herd immunity, you and I spoke about.
Right. It's covered by, for the most part, these are folks who are going to be covered by insurance and have a small copay. And Commissioner Pollard mentioned something that he and I had spoken about, and that is the recent CDC recommendation that flu shots be received by the end of October. We also advised that flu shots not be given before the beginning of October because flu shots have a lifespan. The power of the flu shot, I'm not a clinician, but the efficacy of that immunization wears out over time. And so if you get your flu shot prior to October, that efficacy is going to wane before the flu season is over in the spring. So we advise to get your flu shot during the month of October.
Virginia Mason is starting on the 17th of September.
Because we have a different innovation.
Moving forward, we're providing first aid services at one final local event, Doggy Stock 5. I think it's over, isn't it? We're present at Snoqualmie Valley Block Party on the 8th of September. That's what
That's
we're
done, yeah.
participating, we did participate in Equitable Employee Health Fair on the 11th. And we will be a sponsor for the King County Athletic Conference Tournament in February. And moving further on, advanced care planning services will resume next month after 6 months minimum service due to staffing. And the Stanford Provider Wellness Survey, which is WISHA and WSMA sponsored, is currently open with the purpose of capturing a better understanding of the extent of provider burnout in the state and better insight into contributors. So efforts to address it will be information driven. In September, I don't know if it started or not, heart review, telestroke, neurologists are anticipated. Infection grant application has been submitted to fund purchase and monitoring the tool for cultures, infections, treatments, and other data to bring our HIA, which is health-acquired infection, hospital-acquired infection rates down further. And I don't think I need to redo our credentialed positions. Like what would you want? Any questions?
Do I hear any questions from anybody?
What is this grant that we made an application for?
I can comment on that. It's a software program called Century 7. And what this does is it mines data out of our electronic medical record on current patients as well as past patients to do two things. One is for current patients to look at the information in the medical record that combined together would profile patients with respect to their risk of infection. And then the other is it provides a look back ability to trend data to help us improve our processes. We do this manually now. Our infection prevention nurse gathers all of this data, and it is extremely time consuming and not nearly as effective as the computer is in pulling together all that data. What I'm really excited about with this is it's one of those very first things where we're starting to see electronic medical record data be mined for the benefit of patients. It's not just a repository for, saying that we have a record that you can pull up at any time. It's now pulling all those pieces together for some real data intelligence.
Are there any other questions or discussions from medical committee?
Madam President?
Yes.
For the record, could you clarify the decision on the CEO incentive plan? Is that coming back next month or are you taking action tonight?
That's a finance committee. We're not taking any action yet, are we, on that?
No.
Was there actually something?
There's new business, this is action items.
Yeah.
Action was requested under the item.
Okay,
finance.
item.
It says finance, it says action items requested, CEO incentive plan. Was there
an action?
I think I've heard two comments from two commissioners that were not part of the finance meeting, and they both would like to have a little bit more time. So that's not.
So you're not gonna, okay, so we're not gonna take any action yet?
I don't think
No
so.
motion came to the floor.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I just needed to know.
That's
I
all right.
Thank you.
want to make sure that everybody is I want this board to be unified.
I agree, I totally agree. Okay, so I guess we're not gonna take an action on it at this time, we're gonna maybe meet again, is that correct? Yes, no, group that's working on this?
Special session.
If there were more, if we had comments, we could.
Well, we did have a couple of comments from Commissioner Pollard about facilities that were looked at.
Well, I think it would be good for, I think what he wants to do is look at all of those facilities that are mentioned as part of the background to conduct the recommendations and look at them a little more carefully and see if they compare with ours, which I guarantee they won't.
And I think I suggested also that, we have 5 out of the 9, and I don't know if we should continue to look for more. So I think that we need to at least decide tonight when is the follow-up. I don't think we should wait till next month, but there should be a special
Oh,
session.
you wanna vote tonight?
I think that we should look into this tonight.
May I comment as well? I think under the bylaws, I can comment during debate, and I heard enough consensus here that there's a desire for some time to consume what is in front of you, to ask more questions. You know, Steve's available to answer questions, and what I was hearing was, let's give ourselves that time and bring it back at the next regular meeting.
Well, she explained, yeah, Nancy, I'm sorry. You had explained, and you had asked us if we have any more questions, so I think this is the time that we should, if we want to.
Yeah, I mean, we don't want.
Really, we don't want to
come
have
back here.
2, 3, 4, 5 times for you to come back. So this is an opportunity for all of us who still have some questions and issues to bring it up tonight.
So do you still have more questions that
I don't have any more questions.
do any other board members have questions?
I have more questions, and part of my questions came out of the discussion tonight. And I need to have an opportunity to read and think about it and reflect on what Mr. Spiker said about the various categories and so forth. You know, what's the big rush?
Well, I think the big rush is just so we can plan budget-wise for it and make sure that we allow for it next year.
I think we have time for planning for that.
And that's in November, so we do have some time.
I would propose then that management put a contingency in the next year's budget for this, a placeholder, should the board decide to go forward with it.
And I think that's a good idea, and I think also that gives us time to look at what it looks like in the budget should these things happen, so that we get it, when maybe we bring it up at budget time. You wanna support, accept that? Somebody wanna make a motion that we?
I'd make a motion, that would be absolutely fine, that would be great.
So it gives us time to ask questions. Do we want to meet with her once more before then, before we finish the budget or during budget? And find out how it affects the budget?
I don't think so. I think I'm pretty got a good grasp. I think the other folks looking at it looks fairly complex. I mean, if you're going to look at it.
It does.
And so that's why I thought it would be to be able to maybe ask some follow-up questions of Steve. And, you know, because he's been part of the process on this. And I think it'd be appropriate for that to happen.
I think the issue is all about trying to find 5 more other entities that's comparable.
Nobody's proposing that.
I don't know, that seems to be the issue right now,
No,
because it's not comparable to what is being offered.
Go ahead, Nancy.
I just have a comment on that.
Yes.
I can tell you that the data is very consistent. So one option would be to ask us to rework the numbers with just the 5 Washington hospitals, and we could do that, that's an option. But I will tell you that I doubt that it will change things. In my professional opinion, I doubt that it will change results. They were quite consistent. And they were and the 990 data plus the hospitals that you gave us were also consistent. So one of the things I forgot to mention earlier is, one of the things we also found was that the CEO is paid at market at the moment. And that's part of our report as well, in our full report to the board. When we were waiting to finalize the full report when the plan's approved, because you need that in order to do the IRS rebuttal presumption. So you can wait. You can give people a chance to digest. You can try to rework the numbers, and I'm not positive it's going to change anything.
question. Did you say the CEO's pay is at market right now?
Yes.
Okay, that's important, right?
Yes, and I forgot to say it when I looked at it earlier, but it's accrued. That's why we based the recommendations on his current pay, because we found it to be at market.
Is it prudent for us, since you're saying that it's not going to change regardless of how we look at how we slice or dice the pie, it's not going to change the result?
Maybe a few dollars here or there, but the effect on the budget and the effect on the payout is probably negligible.
What you're doing is sharing some of the increase in income with the CEO, so almost no effect on the budget.
So I would suggest, my suggestion would be that we adopt this the way it looks right now as accepting that, and then we have further discussion when we do the budget and plug that into the budget and how that's gonna look when we actually see our whole budget, so we know the impacts of it. Is there any other questions?
I second.
Well, I think it's not just the organization where they're located, their budget and all of that, but some of these organizations have considerably more services, therefore more demand on the CEO for overseeing that. And so there's a lot more to this than just the money. I find it interesting that there's nothing in here that measures community acceptance and respect of the hospital. We got a real problem there in this community. That's why they go to other hospitals.
I'm not sure that that's possible to get that data.
It may not, it may be too subjective, but there could be a way to survey sampling in the community and so forth, and then look for an opportunity for measurement for 1 year to the next to see if that can improve.
Well, that's why one of the metrics is patient satisfaction.
That's patient satisfaction. What about those people that don't become patients? They don't come here because they have a negative attitude toward the hospital. How are we going to change that?
But that's reflected in the meeting the budget and the other utilization. It's reflected in utilization.
Well,
And I actually have a question for Steve. Am I allowed to ask a question?
Yes, go ahead, Betsy.
Getting lost in the Robert's rules here. I do not remember what criteria you gave the person who gave you back the list. Maybe you could reiterate to the board what the criteria were?
I said I wanted a hospital that was heavy in swing bed and that was within 1 to 2 hours drive of the metropolitan area, so kind of geography. And in addition to swing bed, had other outpatient services. So that's the criteria.
Is there a budget criteria for that?
I did not say about the criteria because what the board expressed was the service mix. Saying it's much different. Easier to have everyone if you have the high school and then also your road service, not 8 hours away.
I think my concern would be also when you look for hospitals with all those criteria and a certain budget size, I'm not positive we would have got anywhere near as many in Washington State.
well, I think we would have. I think what we're comparing here is apples and oranges. When you look at your list of comparables, that's not.
I do have a question I'd like to pose before we leave this topic for Nancy, and I just comment. I appreciate the work that she's done, the work that Steve has done, the work that the Finance Committee has done. It's and deliberately done without much of my involvement, if any, and that's the right thing to do. But you mentioned, Nancy, that the CEO pay was at market, and I'd like you to explain what that means, because it may be interpreted that $220,000 is the market. I think that's not the case. What it means is there's a certain range that defines the market. So maybe talk a little bit about that so there's some clarity on that.
You are absolutely correct. Thank you for bringing that up. Well, to a compensation person, when we look at data, the at market, the precisely at market number is at the middle 50th, at the 50th percentile. That means exactly half pay less and exactly half pay more. And recognizing that no set of people is ever going to make that exact dollar amount. So what we do is we set a range with 5% below and 5% above the exact middle. So, so it'd be 95% of, all the way to 105% of the exact middle. And I think the CEO's pay right now is about 96 or 97% of market. So it's at market, not exactly precisely the 100%, but it's real
It's
close.
just barely under, but it's under.
Yes,
Right.
that is actually correct. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Do we want to vote on accepting this as a tool to be used and put in our budget? Do you want to wait as a board to decide that at the time of the budget, hang on to this and look at it? Or do we want to vote that, yeah, we want to use this in our budget? Oh, we can't vote with that motion.
We're gonna get the budget figures the first week of November. So we could meet next month on this and make sure we do it right. And we have time to do the budget announcement for the budget year. I don't see a problem with that, but it's up to you.
My question would be, or my goal would be to already be ready to do it at the budget, to be prepared to do it. So if there's any other questions that need to be done now would be the time.
I would say October is the time. You say we get the budget proposals for the first week of November. And the budget hearing is the second week of November, so we have October to do it. So it doesn't have to be tonight. And I think Mr. Spiker faced some very good points about how we need to take another look at this based on the information we've gotten.
I have a good grasp on it, all right? Because I've been working on it, okay?
Yeah.
So I know that
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be polite to the other commissioners because I don't, the three sheets that you saw are pretty intricate and pretty complex if you both, Dariel and I both said that.
Yeah.
And that's the only reason. If there's something in there, I think that doesn't quite, someone doesn't understand, I think they should have an opportunity. As far as allowing the staff to start developing the budget based on this, I'd sure like to have that because we'll be meeting with them in about a month. And we're going to start working on the budget in about a month, I guess, or 40 days. So, and I want to have an accurate budget this year. Well, I think.
Make a motion.
So I don't know if we really have a
motion on the floor.
we do to do what?
Commissioner Spiker's proposed to have a placeholder in the 2019 budget so the board can approve the plan in the future. And Commissioner Young
Okay.
seconded.
All right, so is there any other debate on that motion? Hearing none, then let's vote. All those in favor of the motion that Commissioner Spiker's made, say yes. Yes. Opposed? Okay, so, don't check, okay. Opposed?
Could you read that?
Yeah, would you please, because
Commissioner Spiker's proposed to have a placeholder in the budget, I added the 2019 for clarity, if the board approves the plan in the future.
The space holder is what amount?
Placeholder.
Well, I just want to make sure that that's included in the planning process.
So that the amount of the bonus is in there, so we know that, yes,
Yeah, what we
Start
want to
working
do
with
is,
it.
we're gonna divert.
let's assume
Please, yeah.
we have a budget.
Yeah.
Say it has a $500,000
Okay.
income. The CEO makes that. Let's then factor in what the payout would be at that exact amount. And that's easy to do, we will do that.
You would want to decide what budget amount to put in
Right.
the threshold target.
Yeah. That's
Based on
yeah.
this draft.
Yeah.
I actually put in threshold because anything else.
We're not, we're not going to approve
Sure.
this
Yeah.
today.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that we get a long-standing amount or a long period of time to actually deal with the budget and have everything in place. But I would like everybody to be ready to vote on October, whatever it is.
Next regular meeting.
Yeah, 11th, I think, is it?
So can I call for the question? Are we with
Yes, you may.
Or what?
Could you read the question and read what we're voting on?
You did vote.
We voted.
We did vote, okay.
I think when did we vote?
I didn't think I did.
We did not vote.
It was, because I didn't,
She read
I
the,
remained quiet.
Because we had.
So, yeah, to repeat
she
it.
made a motion to us, but we didn't vote.
Maybe you did.
You voted.
How did we
The
vote?
president asked, and there were 3 ayes, and then she said, "Are there any noes?" And I didn't hear any noes, but I heard 3 ayes.
Yeah, that was only.
Is that a quorum? I didn't.
Yes.
It's a majority.
Because I didn't.
Quorum is
I
the number
wanted
you need to
clarification,
conduct
that's
business. Majority is the number
Right,
you need
isn't
to
that what
pass.
you wanted to know, clarification?
I voted again.
Tell me what did you know? We don't know. Because we didn't ask for a roll call vote.
Well, I heard Joan, Commissioner Young, Spikers, and Heron, definitely. I did not hear it.
I think that's right.
I do not believe Commissioner Pollard said anything, but there were no nays.
Is it too late at this point to ask for a roll call vote or recording of what Valerie just said?
That
Of course
would-
not.
That would be,
That'd be simple, yeah, you can just ask the clerk to take the roll as either a division of the House, because there's some confusion as to what the roll call was, so perfectly fine.
all right. Commissioner Pollard? Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Spikers?
Yes.
Commissioner Heron?
Yes.
And President Norris?
Yes.
It's 4 yes, 1 no.
Thank
And
you.
the roll call will be indicate the names of the voters. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
At the end of the minute.
Which puts us now to, let's see, finance, medical facilities. Facilities met on August 27th, 2018. The Acroban project was updated by Scott. This project is where there's some damage on some of the walls and things, and they are repairing those and repainting them with something, so they're all similar colors and custom colors. And then the product, however, the product has been unavailable by the manufacturer for at least 3 months. Scott will also be improving the installation process so that they are ready to go once the product arrives again and is available. Puget Western Property, Apple Lake Estates, Tom Parker, David Spikers, myself and Tom all met with the city of Snoqualmie officials, Bob Larson, city administrator, Mark Hoffman, the community development director, to discuss the Puget Western property. And the mayor, Larson, was scheduled to attend as well, but had conflict, so the mayor was not there. If agreement can be reached with King County to bring the property to UGB, the urban growth boundary, the district would consider purchasing Puget Western property and provide it with the 20-acre district that it already owns. A significant portion of the combined 50 acres would be set aside as a green space. This would provide the county with a green space buffer and allow the developable land for district and city. The city reported that they have tried 3 times to get the county to change that urban growth line, and they are not very willing. Council member,
They were very optimistic.
they were not optimistic, the county has not been willing. Council,
Yeah,
Council member Kathy Lambert has regarded such a proposal. City staff asked that the hospital representatives to wait on contacting King County until they have had an opportunity to discuss the idea with the city council to be sure that they, the council member theirs, would or wouldn't oppose any idea. So
I can provide a little update if you don't mind.
if you have an update, that would be good.
I do, and I want to thank the Snoqualmie City Council for addressing this idea. We have Mr. Mayhew is here from the council. Good to see you. And the council was either, I think, supportive or agnostic on that. Either was okay, whatever, or we don't oppose that. That'd be okay. Go forward with it. The idea being that let's have the property owners go forward with the idea rather than the city. So we did propose this to the other property owner and had a very cordial conversation conversation with the CEO of Puget Western, who frankly felt that the idea had a lot of merit, but his marching orders were clear: sell the property, get it sold. He's got 2 buyers who have made offers on that property, and his board wants him to get that thing liquidated. So great idea, just not the right timing for the property owner. So they're moving forward with the sale of that property. Now, the silver lining that I tell myself on this is that they didn't sell our property, and that 30 acres is not going to be it's not a smelter. It's 5-acre parcels of housing. So it's still going to be attractive green space that someday, whatever we do with our 20 acres will probably be compatible, or at least won't be adversely affected by neighbors, notwithstanding all the arguments we've made about potential water issues and whether or not those wells on those 6 parcels are going to impair our scenic water rights. But we lost that battle in court, and so that's behind us now. So off they go to sell that property, and when the day comes that we want to do something on ours, at least it will be bordered by, I think, attractive uses.
So, clarification, so those 5-acre parcels, those will be for R1 development, is that correct?
R5.
R5 means 5 at one house.
One house for 5
acres.
acres.
Residential 5 acres.
It is a residence, a house, it's not an office.
Must be residential.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Panorama housing project, okay, you already addressed that, isn't it? Parkway monument sign, that's also new.
All done. The reflective sign is up.
Snoqualmie Parkway traffic control. Traffic at 99th of the Parkway remains an issue, particularly in the afternoons, both for safety and business purposes. As reported in the past, the annual traffic study is done for 3 years after the hospital was completed. Tom has asked the city that they have agreed to get a 3rd and final study underway, which I don't think is. I counted a lot of intersections. It's maxed out. That's all there is to it. And it's maxed out early. It's going to need to be fixed. That's all
It does need to be fixed, and your point to me, which I absolutely made clear to the city that this was going to happen in the study, and it is, that they're assessing our impact on that intersection, not just the fact that it absolutely needs help. And I did receive yesterday an email from the city that said they had commissioned the study.
Okay. There's going to be a traffic study for that. Let's see, where am I? Okay. Tom also talked with Chief Perry Phillips and explored ideas with them for posting an officer occasionally at that intersection, which they have done. I've seen it before. Further idea on the building a stub to develop 96th Street and placing a traffic control device there, like roundabout. These are just a bunch of things that have come up in the conversations. And prior to the property being developed could be discussed. And then the light of the roundabout, but the whole point of the roundabout is not to have a light, just so people know. And that's on the Parkway. I'm too close to 18. 6, making the hospital a community gathering place and handout. Tom has been working on that. A list of upcoming uses in September was provided attached to the minutes. And I hope you all have seen that. And the next meeting for facilities will be Monday, September 24th, 2018, in the East West Conference Room, and we adjourned at 9:07. And now we have Emma.
Questions?
Yes, questions. Yes, Commissioner Pollard.
You stated that the city has posted a police officer.
The city's willing to ask once in a while for a police officer to be posted out here. We've had King County.
I think you said you already had seen that. Has that been done?
Oh, I've seen the police chief, the King County Police down here a number of times. And
Directing traffic, not responding to an accident.
that's correct. The King County Police has done it, and the city can only go so far. They can't get to the interchange. And the interchange is what's affecting us.
Of course, but I'm not aware that any police officer has been
Not up on 99.
directing traffic.
Not up on 99, yeah, but they've
They've been at this intersection right here at the ramps. That's where they sit, is on this side.
I'm concerned about people leaving and entering the hospital parking lot. And I'm scared to death that we're gonna have a serious
I
accident.
agree. I think everybody
Yeah,
agrees.
we did talk about this.
Yeah.
So,
And I think the city's said that they're willing to occasionally put an officer, and I know King County is aware also, and that's really all we can get right now.
Talk.
I agree. All right, any other questions for facility? Hearing none, we will move on to the Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee.
Okay, we're just gonna read a summary of our Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee meeting of today, of this September 13th. We met for the 8th meeting and continue to receive and consider modifications to the bylaws and the newly created rules of procedures. The committee, as we previously noted last month, has extended its meeting from 5 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. It's also looking at additional dates in order to complete the review by the end of the year. So tonight, the committee is providing the board the draft rules of procedures and anticipates at the next board meeting or shortly thereafter, we'll be able to provide a draft set of the bylaws, hopefully next month. Tonight is the rules and procedures as we indicated. There you go, and one for Mr. Fowler here. The committee in its meeting this evening, that's yours. Because John already has one. The committee in its meeting this evening continued to address and draft language pertaining to benefits of commissioners, the standing committees, conflicts of commissioners, and the hospital foundation. It's very tedious. I just wanted to let you know that it takes, to do a due diligent work, really have to make sure that we are, looking at every details there is on both the rules and procedures and the bylaws as well. So hopefully we will have a work study session this
2 weeks from yesterday.
2 weeks from it, on the rules of procedures. So that will be part, yes, this 2 weeks from today. So that will be included in our work study session. It's an opportunity for all of us to, I hope by then everybody have read it and made notes and comments. So we are all in sync and we are all unified in our voting. We can agree to disagree, but the end analysis that we need to make sure that we are all on the same page, okay?
Not dealing with the bylaws.
Not yet, just the rules of procedures for the work study.
Yeah, and I believe the proper term is rules of procedure, not rules of procedures.
Rules of procedure or procedures,
That's
it's all
on for 2
synonymous.
weeks from now, and we'll get that in the change.
Yeah.
Well, just Google
Okay.
rules of procedure, and that's the way it will come out.
Plural.
Say,
I am using the plural because there's so many of them.
I think it's a difference without a distinction. And having said that, the correct term would probably be rules of procedure.
Okay.
But we can address that and have a lengthy debate.
We can vote on it. Either way. I like the plural part of it. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Emma. And thank you, committee, for doing that.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. Okay, old business affiliation. Our CEO, Tom Harford.
Thank you.
As I mentioned in my report, the board gave me a charge at our last meeting to work with the potential affiliate partners and come up with some high-level terms related to deal structure and report that back to you, and that's what I'm doing tonight. Val is bringing around to you a copy of the slide deck for you to follow along. Take your notes on there. I'll wait for her to get that in hand for everybody. the cover page there says affiliation update, transaction structure, and high-level terms. And we have the logos of the two organizations that we're working with, Old Lake and Virginia Mason. Next slide is a update on the process plan that I have laid out in the
Right now.
red
Yes.
type is the
It doesn't
place
take
where we are.
us. We usually get
dot
copies, so I wanna make
you're
sure
here. And that is, we're working to establish a letter of intent. And the step that we're working on here tonight is the term sheet development, selection of an organization that we would want to enter into a letter of intent with. Next slide here, just a reminder, this was the recommendation, you approved my recommendation from last meeting to develop term sheets, and you'll see those high-level terms in a subsequent slide. I wanted to remind us of what evaluation criteria we've established. Our first was that brand was really important to us to grow our outpatient service volumes. We wanted geography to support convenient access and patient flow. We wanted the organization we're working with to be strong financially and being willing to use that strength to help us grow. We wanted a commitment to invest in our scope of services and a commitment to community health and wellness. We wanted a good match on mission and values of that organization, as well as vision and strategy. Where are we headed? And then we wanted to make sure that we get to think about other considerations. And you'll see some other considerations listed in the side-by-side comparisons tonight. On the next slide is our process plan, and these are high-level deal points. These are things that you as a board said are important to us as we look at the high-level deal points or the terms. Rebranding again, that the partner would lease and operate the hospital and clinics, so all together. That real assets and debt remain with the district. That's because, as you recall, the assets and the debt are all tied together with our bonds. That there be a lease term that allows purchase option in the future. And that can happen at a certain point. It is 7 years from now when the bonds are callable. We can refinance the bonds at that point. And we wanted to make sure that our affiliate partner is comfortable with having that be part of our look forward and expressed in our transaction. We wanted there to be performance measures, and we wanted the service scope, the services that are provided by the hospital and the clinics to continue to meet the needs of the community.
You want to take questions only at the end or as we go along?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
Well, when you state your partner leases and operates hospital and clinics, that eliminates Virginia Mason, does it not?
This would eliminate Virginia Mason, but these are the criteria. These are the goals that the board set months ago, and so I'm just coming back to them.
Well, I don't recall that, but it seems to me that if we are still continuing to consider Virginia Mason, that at this point, that should not be part of our process plan. In other words, the management agreement would have to be another option if we're going to keep that in the mix.
Okay, thank you for that input. Let's take a look at the term sheet comparison. First is rebranding, and you'll see a side-by-side of Overlake and Virginia Mason, and this is what I have received back from these organizations about where their comfort level is. First is Overlake Hospital and Clinic to rebrand with the Overlake name and with Virginia Mason. Hospital and Clinic to rebrand with the Virginia Mason name. No difference there. With respect to lease and operate the hospital, achieving those economies of scale, Overlake leases the hospital and assumes the Ridge lease and all equipment leases sufficient for the district to comply with bond covenants and fulfill its mission ongoing after the transaction. Virginia Mason's model that they prefer is a management services agreement, and that is where Snoqualmie Valley Hospital, or the district, pays Virginia Mason a fee for operating the hospital and the clinics. So two different models, but again, we're not locked in on back to your point, Commissioner Pollard, that was something that was expressed by the board many months ago, but you're not tied to it. But this is an opportunity for you to look side by side at the deal structure and the terms related to that. Assets remaining with the district, yes, in both cases. A little more detail under Overlake is that included in the agreement an option to transition from a lease to a purchase. They've said that they would be comfortable with that being expressed as an option. They also said that they would exclude East Campus. They're not interested at this point of acquiring East Campus. They're solely interested in the hospital and the clinics. The next point, purchase option. And so it's redundant, but they're both willing to have that in the LOI. Even though Virginia Mason would be a management services agreement, they would be willing to have expressed that at some point in time in the future when the bonds are callable, they are fine with us saying we would offer that to you, for example, under a right of first refusal to purchase the hospital. They said that would be okay. Next slide. District operates to fulfill its mission. Both of us have said yes and fully support the notion that the district is not just a bill-paying organization, bringing in tax revenues and then paying on making sure that bonds are serviced, but that the district has a mission going forward and that it needs to have a budget in order to fulfill that mission. Both organizations support that notion. Performance measures, yes, on Overlake, they would agree to them, and that the measures should be designed to support a long-term commitment. What they mean by that is they want to make sure that the deal doesn't get terminated for the performance measures, but that they're okay to have them in there. There may be a handful of what they call trigger measures. Such, for example, one trigger measure could be if Overlake is not making its lease payment. Well, of course, that would trigger a termination of the agreement. They agree that they would want to have as few trigger measures as possible because they want a long-term relationship. And Virginia Mason was also comfortable, as was recommended in one of our work study sessions, to ask them if they were willing to have a performance-based management services agreement. They said yes. Allocation, service scope and expansion. Yes, consistent with market studies from Overlake and Virginia Mason both. They want to make sure that this expansion of services fit with the growth of the community and the needs of the community based on market studies. So it's not on something that somebody thinks would be a good idea, but would actually be supported by the data because they want to make sure there's demand for those services if they add them. And lastly, allocation of unrestricted cash and excess tax revenue. Overlake said yes, that would be based on making sure that the district is able to continue to meet its debt covenants. They would want to see during due diligence, that's after the LOI is signed, and we're into due diligence, the development of pro forma budgets that make sure that those debt covenants are met by the district, and that the growth assumptions that are in those pro formas are something that they agree with, and it's not too much, frankly. And then allocation of unrestricted, it really doesn't apply under the Virginia Mason deal because it's a different structure. Next slide, I want to talk about some additional considerations I think it's important for you to think about. First is that we have history between our organization and these other organizations. A little richer history with Overlake than Virginia Mason, as described here in this slide. We all have history. I would say we all, Dr. Wickup, myself, Steve, we all have history with working with these two organizations. And with Overlake, it's the geriatric psych program, our swing bed program. They are a major referral hospital into our swing bed program. the development of our acute myocardial infarction program. They provided support for trauma and our cardiac and stroke designations. Overlake was very helpful most recently with our trauma program. Invitation to the clinically integrated network. They didn't have to do that, and they brought us in to EHN. They currently provide our cardiology service. They currently provide our echocardiography service, and that they do have a presence in Issaquah nearby. For Virginia Mason, they operated a North Bend clinic until the year 2000. They provide the first aid at the Boeing Classic, and they also have an Issaquah presence. With respect to brand recognition, we believe that Overlake will help us to grow all of our services. They already have existing market share here. Their acute care market share within the district is 25%. For for Virginia Mason, we believe they will also help us to grow our services, but not necessarily swing bid. We don't see a lot of referrals from Virginia Mason, and it's a geography issue. There are much fewer patients at Virginia Mason in acute care who live out here on the east side, so that's a geography issue. And yes,
we don't need to grow our swing bed program. We're practically at 100% capacity to begin with.
we are very close on that, but I guess a better word should have been maintain and keep stable our swing bed program. And the reason I say that is because earlier we have had 2 months this year where our swing bed referrals dropped. There's always this ebb and flow, and having a partner who can help us maintain that swing bed program, I figured was something that we wanted to consider.
Yeah, but I think that result would come primarily from respect of either name, not necessarily from additional referrals from either organization. Since we're at 100% capacity, is that true?
The point that I'm also making here is that if there is any decline, I don't suspect there will be, but if there's any decline in our swing bed, which of the two organizations is more well equipped to be able to provide additional referrals into the swing bed program? And that would be Overlake.
And also Swedish, and also other
Yes,
organizations.
but we're not comparing ourselves.
Yeah, I realize that.
Can we move on, please?
And then the other point about Virginia Mason is on market share. They have 2% of the acute care market share. Now, I will say that we don't have the outpatient market share data. That is not available to us yet. WSHA has actually been working on a project for the last 2 years. This has been kind of a holy grail in healthcare data, and that is outpatient market share numbers. And I can tell you, I've been wanting this data for 25 years, and WSHA is finally able to crack this one, and by the end of this year, they told us there's going to be a new database available to all hospitals to see outpatient market share. And then the last note here is geography. They're not that different. I think it's more of a psychological difference. One is in Seattle and one is on the east side. But I actually did I did Google Maps on the travel times here at 3:30 in the afternoon. It's probably a little bit different in the morning, but that's when I was working on the project. My last slide is a recommendation. Management should make recommendations to its board, and tonight I come to you with a recommendation. We need to move forward with a letter of intent. If we're going to do this affiliation, we need to pick a partner and start working on it. And I recommend tonight that we move forward with Overlake Medical Center to form a non-binding exclusive letter of intent. What does that mean? It means that it's non-binding because it does not, just because we have a letter of intent doesn't mean that we must end up with a definitive agreement. It puts us into the phase of due diligence and that phase of deliberation that Skip talks about, where the information that we're sharing is confidential until such point that the board makes a decision about affiliation. It's also exclusive, meaning that we will only be working with one party on the due diligence, working toward a definitive agreement. Should at any time during that process we decide it's not working, we would serve notice and we would be out. But that would be done formally with written notification to Overlake that it's not working out, and we would go back to looking at other potential partners. But to get us down the road and start working on a letter of intent, we need to take that step tonight to keep our process going forward, and based on the side-by-side comparisons of these two organizations, I am recommending Overlake. And I'm sure we're going to have some discussion. The last thing I would say is that I would entertain a motion.
I'd make the motion right now to go ahead with the CEO's recommendation at this time, and we can discuss the reasons for my motion.
Second. I second the motion.
Is there a discussion?
Point of clarification on the slide here about geography, 25 miles from Virginia Mason, 19 miles for Overlake. So you're talking about the Virginia Mason Hospital down on 9th Street or whatever it is in Seattle.
I did measure to their medical centers, not to their but each one has a presence of clinic, urgent care in Issaquah. I was measuring to their main hospital campus.
Yes, because they have a very comprehensive clinic in Issaquah. It's everything but inpatient beds. And I guess what I'm saying here is that there would be an opportunity for Virginia Mason patients, and there are many, to have an inpatient opportunity. This were a possibility. So that's point one. I think it's not clear whether this is an advantage or disadvantage. I think for Virginia Mason, it would be very attractive to affiliate with us. Second thing I would mention is that remember Regional Health Yakima/Astria? They had a management contract. Madam, please let me speak without interrupting me.
Actually, I'm hearing from another commissioner that that's old business.
That is not old business, it's relevant here, and under Robert's Rules of Order, when you're recognized, you should have 10 minutes to be able to speak, and more in a small organization. And so please let me finish my thought.
I'll let you finish your thought.
And I just think it's important for us to recall that in terms of a management contract, that's not necessarily a negative thing, because that's exactly how Astria Health, that we were considering affiliating with, is run. It's under a management contract by an outfit in Tennessee. So they were under a management contract, and we were considering affiliating with them, which put us pretty down on total. So I will not support an affiliation with Overlake based on many things, including the way they treated us a few years ago, and that has not been forgotten. They still look at us as a country bumpkin, and unless they were actually willing to state how much money they would put into our operation, I think they would just look at us as a feeder for their hospital.
Sarah, I'm coming from another commissioner.
Yes, I think the past history with Overlake is past, and it's a different players now, and they have different approaches. I don't think you should take that commissioner should take that into consideration, because that's down the drain. Overall, in reviewing all of this information in front of me, I think very highly of Overlake in terms of the services that they're going to be able to provide, the brand name that is near and dear to this ridge and in the valley, their financial strength compared to VM, the geography is important, and so I really believe that just because the geography or the stream bed may not be something that is strong and for Virginia Mason, but we have that existing service now that we need to work on, in addition to what affiliating with Overlake could provide us. So we need to look at every possibilities there is and not to go back, what happened to us, how we were looked down by Overlake. I don't think that should be even part of this situation. So we're moving forward, looking at the present, what is in front of us now.
Commissioner Spikers, you'd like to say something?
Dwelling on the past will get you nowhere. That's, so I do remember that. I was very upset. You know, I felt some bad tension and vibes from the last time we dealt with Overlake. But today is a different day. We're on different ground. We've got a new hospital. We've got great staff. We're attracted to a partner. I think that for the good of our constituents and taxpayers, we need to expand services. I believe analyzing the considerations that Commissioner Aaron has spoke about, and the term sheet that really is pretty close to what I would think would be a start in an LOA process. I think that would be, I think we should go ahead at this time. We always have the right to stop, and so do they at any time. So let's get this thing going. We've been hemming and hawing on this for probably, I have been anyway, for 5 years. I've been saying, let's affiliate. This is probably the time to do it, so let's do it.
Commissioner Young, do you have something you'd like to share?
Well, I happen to be a Virginia Mason former employee for a number of years and a whole bunch of things, and so I kind of understand some things. Plus, my husband has spent several weeks there as a patient, but it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Just get the job done.
Do something.
As somebody that sat on that last committee with Overlake, I think there's some misconceptions, and I don't think that they treated us as poorly as you think they did, Commissioner Pollard. I think there was some bad communication between the two entities, and I think that contributed some attitudes on both our part and their part that contributed to a breakdown in communication. So and I personally, Overlake's close, it's easy, they're good, they're easy, they're close, and most of our staff, most people, at least the people I talk to, use Overlake. That's what they're comfortable with. And Virginia Mason in rush hour traffic, that distance can make a lot of difference in how quick you're going to get there, going into Seattle.
We're not talking about going into Seattle.
But if you're a patient there, if you're in their clinic, then if you need to be transferred to there, they would maybe want you in their hospital versus here. If we're just talking rehab, I don't know that it makes that much difference. That would be a good one. Commissioner Pollard.
It's all very nice, these figures, these slides, and so forth. But the bottom line is, what would the people in our district want? There are 50,000 people in the district. They are half of them are taxpayers and residents and voters. And, you know, it really doesn't matter what we pick if the people don't want that pick. And therefore, I think we ought to do what some cities have done in the past, and that's get an advisory vote on whether to do this affiliation. This was done in the city of Kent, for example, on the issue of fireworks, shall we or shall we not, and they shut down the fireworks in that city. But that's not an unusual thing for an organization to do, is go out and do an advisory vote, get the opinion of the people. Let's just say hypothetically that we come up with this wonderful arrangement with Overlake, or for that matter, Virginia Mason, and the people don't respond. And they don't come anymore to our hospital than they do now. What have we gained? So I'd like to know more about what the people think. They own this hospital.
Commissioner Heron, I believe. you
Yeah,
wanted
let
to
me just say, I live on the ridge. I know many people here have been asking me, when are you gonna affiliate with Overlake? I said, well, there's still a process that we have to go through. Oh, I wish that you pick Overlake. So let me tell you, there's quite a number of people in the district, maybe, I don't know about the nation, of course, that's looking forward to having Overlake as one of our affiliate partners. So that's just my observation from my community. That's some of the things that I'm hearing right now.
Commissioner Young, do you have any, you already said something, so I guess it's Spikers, do you?
Yeah, I just want to respond to Commissioner Pollard, not in a bad way or anything like that. Just, I know that an advisory vote would be at least $75,000. And in my opinion, a waste of money. But that's, I mean, if we really came down to where our history with Overlake is huge. And we've got documentation that there are a lot more people that use Overlake in this community than Virginia Beach. We've had studies brought to the board. And so the continuum of care that we all would like to have for our community, go from our clinics to Overlake if they have to go to a special set, Overlake or wherever, that would be the best bet. And that's what I believe how these bundled packages for reimbursement take place and how people get reimbursed better and how when you have a continuum of care with one entity, it's much more efficient. People know what the left hand is doing when the right hand is doing something. It's just a better system for people instead of, and I think that's what maybe the problem is here is we don't really have a continuum of care. We don't offer all of the services that people really need. So let's get going. Let's do it.
Commissioner Pollard?
Perhaps you saw the article in the USA Today recently related Seattle area hospitals. I was very surprised, not that University of Washington was number one, but Virginia Mason was number two for the Seattle area, and Overlake was not mentioned. Other hospitals were mentioned, but not Overlake. So look it up. It just came out about a month ago. And Virginia Mason was considered second only to University of Washington.
Thank you for that information. Do we have a motion?
We did. We had a second. I think we've had discussion.
I believe we have, so I think it's time to put it to a vote. On the table is Overlake. Are we voting for? Would you read what the motion was, please?
Commissioner Spikers move to proceed with the CEO recommendation.
And could you state what the CEO recommendation is?
Right up there on board, that the district move forward with Overlake Medical Center to establish an exclusive non-binding letter of intent.
Okay, I think that should be,
I'll state it. You just did not state it. I will state it in my minutes.
that's fine. Okay, I'd like a roll call.
All right, we will do a roll call vote. Commissioner Aaron?
Yes?
Commissioner Spikers?
Yes.
Commissioner Young?
Yes.
Commissioner Pollard?
No.
Commissioner Norris? Yes. So it passes. Thank you. Under new business, I have nothing. I don't think anybody else has anything there, so I guess we are now having public comment. Is there any public comment? Scott?
Well, congratulations. It appears as if the fruit is ripe. It appears as if Overlake is a good match. It appears as if the board, with one exception, is united on that. And that is encouraging, very encouraging. For months and years, this board seemed to have been spinning its wheels. It seemed to have been dysfunctional and not able to get its act together, and that's turned around. It didn't happen like a light switch tonight, but I think this is as good an indication of that as anything. I'd encourage those on the board not to look back. I certainly am not looking back. You know my background in terms of the district and my support for previous administrations and previous boards, but this one has to have its own voice and its own personality. And if it's an engine, all of the cylinders ought to be working in unison. It shouldn't be a 5-cylinder engine with only 4 of the cylinders working in concert for going forward and then one of them out of sync. So I would encourage that if someone on this board has a view that their role in life is to be an obstructionist, that they reconsider that. So don't look at the past, look at the future, and play a positive role in moving things forward. And if for any reason you feel that you cannot play a role other than that being an obstructionist, then I would respectfully consider that any board member consider an early and voluntary retirement from the board so that the rest of the board can bring someone on who would actually be a benefit rather than jeopardize the future health and well-being of the staff. Thank you.
Point of order, Madam President, can I respond to that personal attack?
No, we do not respond to public
Well,
comments, Mr. Pollard.
that was a personal attack, and I think you should have cut it off.
We give them 3 minutes, we've had this discussion, it's just the way it is, that people can come and say what they want and we listen, and that's what this time is
Point of
for.
personal privilege. I'm representing the people, and I believe in a 5-member board.
There's no
1/5
more
of the
discussion,
people with
Commissioner
1/5
Pollard.
Commissioner Pollard, the chair is ruling
There
the
is
point
no
of
more
order.
discussion. Point of order, thank you.
We have to put up with that.
All right, so, public comment, any other new business? I have nothing, does anybody else?
Next scheduled meetings?
The next scheduled meeting is September 26, 2018 at 6 p.m. in this very same conference room, the North-South Conference Room.
I will not be here.
You will not be here. It's a work study, you're supposed to be
I
here.
will be in Hawaii with my wife. I've never been there, so
Hawaii's beautiful.
I'd ask to be excused.
You are
It's not an
excused.
anniversary, it's just we haven't been out on a trip together for a long time, so.
You're excused.
So, Commissioner Spikers, that work study will include the review of the procedure. So maybe you can take time to look through that and send us an email.
All right, the next regular.
I'm not sure we want
The next regular meeting is October 11th, 2018, 6:30. You guys, stop it. North-South Conference Room, you are adjourned.